Sure.
Awesome. Hey, Valerie, thanks so much for joining us from beautiful Hawaii. Are you in Honolulu or which part are you in?
So I'm on the Big Island. It's the island that's the most south. So it's like two islands down from Honolulu.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm in Kona.
Kona. Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Well, I still have not made it out to that side of the world. So now working with you has gotten me committed. I got to make that happen. So it's going to get on
Okay, good,
my
good.
list. I'll have to hit you up when I'm over there. Um,
Yeah.
well, I really appreciate you taking some time. It's been an incredible couple of months working with you, and just I always like to set up interviews with people who I know will be able to provide an inspiration to other people. And really, what's awesome, I think, about your story is you came from such a different energy when you started to where things have kind of gravitated for you. And I want you to be able to kind of express that because so many people right now, I think, are experiencing some similar feelings to what you were when you started, just this like kind of dark cloud feeling. And maybe I should just let you put it in your words. What kind of place were you in when we first got connected? What was life about? What were your days kind of consumed by? And how were you kind of feeling about the future at that time?
Well, now looking back, I can honestly say that I definitely didn't really have any sort of anything that I was working towards. I just kind of was going through the motions every single day. And then because I was doing that, I didn't have any sort of passion or meaning in the things that I was doing. And when you don't have that, you start to obviously get into these places where I was sleeping all day in my bed. I live in Hawaii. Why am I not out at the beach? So I would be sleeping all day in my bed. Anything would trigger me and just set me off into a panic frenzy of just crying, and it would be something very very tiny, not even a big deal at all. And I would spend hours zombie scrolling on my phone. I just kind of just going through the motions in life without any real goal or purpose or joy or anything like that. And I was constantly anxious and constantly depressed and constantly worried and just not living in the present at all. And I was in a pretty dark place when I first started working with you, for no reason at all that I could find, because I knew that there was no reason for me to feel that way, but yet I did. So I'm glad that I found you to help me figure out that, like, no, I can turn that around. I can choose to do and feel however I want to. And I'm grateful for the tools that you provided me, because it was pretty dark for a while. I would say I was sleeping in a full day at least 2 or 3 times a month. And that's a lot.
Oh, wow. Well, it's interesting you just said that because I was just about to ask, how do you, looking back on it now, how do you feel that you got to that place? Because what I have tended to find is one of a couple things tends to happen. Like it either sort of seeps in 1% over a period of time, like day by day, and then people kind of are like, how the hell did I get here? Or what tends to happen is, and I think this happened especially this past year with COVID and everything that happened, is some sort of life transition occurs, like a layoff or the loss of a family member, or just who knows, even just the lockdown. I know plenty of people who were financially secure, both of them and their spouse were totally fine, and yet something new kind of shakes someone's tree, and then that becomes kind of the center pillar around a story, like a limiting belief that tends to be really all consuming. So I'm just curious, do you have any insight kind of looking back now as to how you got into that place? Because I think it would be helpful for somebody to see, oh my gosh, wow, yeah, it really is seeping in faster than I thought it is, or it might help somebody kind of see through kind of the blind spots a little bit.
Sure. So now it's so nice to be able to look back and be able to see kind of how I did get there. So a little bit of a backstory: when I was a teenager, I got diagnosed with anxiety and depression. So when you have that language of my anxiety and my depression, it kind of started there. And I just went through the motions of life, going through teenagers, going through my 20s. And then I lost my brother when I was 29, and then I lost my mom when I was 30. And because I was already kind of in a low sort of state at all times to begin with, when I lost them, that threw me into like the worst darkness I could have ever felt, because my main focus was why me? Why my family? Why did this have to happen? Why, why, basically just why me? And it was that constant language over and over and over, and then excusing it with, oh, well, it's okay that I'm sleeping all day because I have depression because I went through this really horrible event. And I'm not gonna blame myself, and I talk really kind to myself because I was just doing what I thought was best at the time. But now I see so clearly, because of all of the tools that I've learned, that I never want to get back to that spot. And um something interesting happened too. It's been a really long week for me this week. My husband was very sick over the weekend, and we were trying to figure out what it was, and I wasn't getting any sleep. And the morning that I took him to the emergency room, which was just 2 days ago, I didn't sleep at all. And I was laying in my bed, and I could feel my old patterns creeping in of, why is this happening to me? Why is this, why is this happening to us? Why can't I get any sleep? Why this? Why that? But then it quickly, like within 5 minutes, I was like, no, you can't think like that anymore. You've worked so hard. You're working so hard, that I tried to shift my focus instead to, what do I need to learn from this? Like, how can I grow from this? Because him getting sick, there's nothing that I could do to stop that, but how I react to it is in my power. And it feels so good to know that,
Yeah.
I didn't fall back into the old habit, because I could have easily fallen back into the old habit of crying, having a panic attack, hyperventilating, all of the things that cause my, the anxiousness and depression. But it was really interesting to see that I was, about to slip into that pattern. But
Right.
then I stopped myself by using, all of the stuff of, no, like, this is not how it's going to be. You do not have to react like this. Like, this is something that is happening. So how can you learn and grow from it? Because you can't stop it from happening. And he ended up getting diagnosed with pneumonia, which was really scary. But instead of freaking out like the old me would have, I just, like, was like, no, I'm strong. We got to get answers. We're going to figure this out. I'm going to get you feeling better. And we woke up this morning and he's feeling better. And I don't think that it's a coincidence, that it's the positive energy, that I knew that we were going to be productive with this. I was only going to have thoughts that serve me through this. And I wasn't going to allow myself to go back into the old pattern of, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why I wish this wasn't happening, or trying to control a situation that I can't control. Can't control situations. I can control how I react to situations.
Right.
So that part's been very empowering, and also good for me to reflect on, because I do think about the past a lot, of how I used to react to these sort of situations. And it's kind of crazy to think that that's how I used to
Right.
be for
Right.
so many years.
It's you're bringing up, I really appreciate you sharing that story, because I don't think there's a person listening who would not be able to relate to that in some way. And I think one of the things you realized going through this process that I always try to impart to people is every single human being has experienced, tribulations, difficulties, maybe even travesties, I mean, abuse perhaps. And
Mhm.
so I think there's kind of this interesting dichotomy where people who've been dealing with depression or anxiety, maybe a member of their family or a friend has said, well, come on, what, you have all these things to be grateful for. And it's perceived as, you're delegitimizing my pain. You're delegitimizing my experience. You're negating the validity of what I've gone through. And the sort of counter argument that I try to make for people, which I think you've really grasped onto, is there's always an invitation for your mind to cling to a disempowering narrative about who you are. And particularly in a moment like what you just described, where life throws a curveball at you you didn't expect, as soon as you're like, wait, I'm in a new environment now. This was not something I predicted. What tends to happen is fear takes over. And if you're not careful and you don't make a conscious decision of what you will believe, what belief you are going to operate from, your mind will grab the lowest common denominator available, which tends to be something that's going to cause you to cling to self-pity or guilt, or something like that. And the challenge too is when that becomes the pattern, is we get this kind of protective shell because we want to feel at least connected with ourselves or secure with ourselves. And as we're doing that, we're isolating from a greater set of choices. It doesn't empower anyone. So there's always the invitation to like make that disempowering story. Your story may even be true. You know, it is true that you've had losses in your life, but you can't change what has occurred in the past, but you do get to change what you make it mean. And the beautiful example I think you're giving is so important for people who have experienced losses of family and friends this past year, especially because out of all of the life circumstances where it would seem justified to cling to sadness, it would be the loss of a loved one. But I think what you've realized too is that doesn't honor them. That doesn't honor you. It doesn't honor any of the people around you. It's not what they would want for you. And it almost dishonors people when it becomes a clung to pattern because it just becomes the trigger for staying in sadness. You know,
Exactly.
it becomes this sort of rationalization to play small. And I really want people to hearing this to see that it's not about disrespecting your life experience. It's not about claiming things are even better than they are. It's about making sure that you operate from a belief system that empowers you, that serves you, and make sure that you have choices. And I mean, what a beautiful illustration, you know, with this situation with your husband. It wasn't like you're like, oh, he's going to be perfectly great tomorrow. You're just like, okay, how do I serve? How do I make sure I'm doing this in a way that helps my house? So that's a really beautiful thing. What had you kind of tried prior to this? Because I'm curious, because obviously this whole approach, you really, you know, there were just light bulbs after light bulbs. I remember for you, what do you feel was the big perspective shift between what you had tried or not tried before and then this experience?
Well, it's really interesting. So about a year before I started your program, I started on like my spiritual journey. So I started with meditation and learning how to take deep breaths and control my breathing and try to, control and live in the moment. But I don't think that the meditation was enough because I was doing it and I was feeling good, but I didn't know why I was feeling good. And I never really tried therapy, even though I do think, if it works for people, they should definitely do it. But I just never thought that that was for me because I didn't think that sitting and talking with somebody was going to help me with my issues. So one of the main things that I did was I tried to journal a little bit and I would do meditations, but I wasn't consistent with it. So I wasn't consistently doing my breathing exercises and I wasn't consistently doing my journaling things. And I was just doing I think you touched on it a little bit early on in the videos, but I was doing one of the where you kind of pick a little bit of things that you're trying to do to deal with the emotions that you're feeling with. So I would try meditation, I would try writing down my feelings, I would try talking with a loved one, I would try just sitting with my emotions and working through it. But none of that really clicked for me because I was doing all of these things that felt good, but I didn't understand why I was doing them. So it didn't really stick with me and I didn't really get as much value out of it as I do now, doing the same things. I do 2 meditations a day now, and I get so much value out of them in my morning and nighttime one. And before, it would be kind of sporadic when I would do it. It would be like, maybe on a Monday night, and then it's, Thursday morning I would do it, and it wasn't consistent. And I think that was one of the things that didn't allow me to kind of move forward with it. So when I started your program and you explained everything scientifically, why we're doing this or why is this or why that, I'm a big science person and I'm a big why person. So when I started to go through the programs and you're explaining why we do this and why we do that, and this is why you feel this way, and this is how you can change it, and this is why you're going to feel this way when you change it, it really clicked for me because it was all of these things that you kind of hear from everybody, like all the general advice that you hear around, just the talk that you say, like, oh, do breathing exercises, oh, do this, but nobody ever explains why. So I think when you don't understand why, it doesn't stick with you because you don't understand why you're doing the exercises. You're like, why am I doing this? You're like, I don't get it. But now when I go through your stuff, I know why I'm doing it. I know why I, do a Mickey Mouse voice in my head. I know why I change colors. Like I know why I do all of these different things. So it helps click with me, just, doing mantras and incantations. Like I would do that stuff before, but again, it wasn't consistent. Now it's consistent every single day. Like I've got different ones through different situations. I work with the public. I've got ones I do when I'm at work. Like I've got ones I do when I'm at home.
Mhm.
I've got ones I do when my animals are getting on my nerves because I have 11 pets at home. So it's the consistency, I think, is what really helped me, it, just excel all of that and have all of the light bulbs sort of click,
Right.
because it was stuff I dabbled in little by little, but I never knew why I did it. And now I know why. I love it. I would never go back.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have experienced a journey like that. And I know a big challenge a lot of people have is they have got like maybe a jigsaw piece, but they haven't seen the whole puzzle,
Yes,
maybe.
exactly. That's a great analogy. That's exactly how it feels. You have these little pieces, but they don't really go together for one big picture. And your program honestly provides like all the pieces and how to put it together, but you got to put it together. I'm just here to show you all the tools. And
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
really, it's wonderful. It's one of the best things that I've ever done for myself.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, compared to how things were before, what is life like now?
Oh,
what do
man.
you experience? What do you feel? What choices are you making? What new standards do you have for yourself?
I mean, I just look at every single day as just a gift that I get to wake up and I get to choose to live my life. I feel so like purposeful now with my actions, where I get up in the morning and I have my, first hour of the day to myself, where I do my meditations, I do my journalings, I do my daily conditionings, I do all of those things. And it really, being in that sort of consistent habit of knowing that it's serving me, has really just helped me see the beauty and joy everywhere around me, even in the ugly stuff. Like when I'm at work and I'm dealing with a difficult person, I use that as an opportunity to, strengthen my patience with people and really strengthen treating people with kindness, because I've learned that most of those difficult people are the ones, unfortunately, who need the kindness the most. And so I'm going to give it to them, because the world's ugly. And before, I was kind of like an eye for an eye person. If you treat me bad, I'm going to treat you bad. But I don't think like that anymore. I'm like, man, if you treat me bad, you've got a lot of healing you got to do, because I would never treat anybody like that. And I just kind of deal with it there, and I tell myself, you got this, and then they go on, and I don't let them ruin my day. I look literally for the lesson in anything that is sort of negative. And what I like about your program is that it's not like the toxic positivity that people do with like, everything's going to be okay, everything's going to be fine. It's like, no, this is a really bad situation right now, but I know that I have the tools to emotionally handle it. And my new standards for myself are, I'm only going to uh, involve myself in things that are going to serve me. So before, I would wake up 30 minutes before I had to go to work, and then, just brush my teeth and go about my day. But now I wake up, I have a morning, I go to the gym, I have a coffee with my husband. We have time together before our day even gets started. And then when I'm going throughout my day, there are moments where it gets a little high stressful, but I stop, I take a deep breath, I do a mantra, and then I go about my business. And then at nighttime, it's, instead of feeling like uber exhausted from work, or these people sucked my energy dry, or I had such a long day and I had such a bad day and I just want to lay on the couch, I don't feel that anymore. Now I get off of work and I'm like, all right, let's go watch the sunset, or let's, do whatever. And I'm just more living kind of in the moment and enjoying the moment. And I'm not living in my head. Like I would say, before I started this program, I lived in my head 95% of the time. And now I live in my head like I don't know, maybe 30% of the time because I'm working on it. It's not perfect, of course, but the fact that I went from 95% living in my head to 30%, I'm so proud of myself because, I'm sitting here watching birds, eat seeds instead of worried about, oh, I have to get this done, I have to get that done, I have to do this. It's like, no, stop and smell the flowers. It's beautiful right now. Like, enjoy this. Like, you get to be here and you get to experience all of these wonderful things. Go enjoy it.
Right.
It's a waste to me to not enjoy things. It's a waste to me to stay in bed now. And I also don't focus on the task at hand. I focus on the final product. I
Right.
don't want to clean my kitchen, but I want to clean kitchen. So it's a lot easier when I think about it like that. Like,
Right.
I don't want to have dishes in the sink, so I do the dishes, and it makes the task so much, more bearable to do rather than, oh, I really don't want to do this right now. It's more like, oh, I get to do this because I'm lucky I have food in the house. I get to sit here and eat with people I love, and I'm so grateful to be able to do these dishes. And it's just so crazy to feel that. I've never felt this in my life. So it feels so wonderful and great.
I What's really amazing that I want to make sure people really get is when people see, especially on camera, somebody like yourself who's so full of joy and hope for the future. It's really tough for them to think, okay, how could that be me? How in the world could that end up being my life? I think just a few months ago, if you would have seen this very interview, of somebody else, you might have thought something similar. And one thing I want to help people see is while this interview serves as kind of a celebration and a capstone of everything that you've done, it was not, an overnight process by any means.
No,
I mean, you've been
no.
working your tail off for months, and that's what people, I think the major takeaways I always try to make sure people get is recovery possible? Yes, absolutely. But most people will not do it because they don't make it an absolute must and cut off from any other possibility and decide to put in the real work to make it happen. And the real work is not just talking about it. The real work is learning how your mind works, rewiring it, and making sure it serves you as opposed to you serving it. And there's so many pieces here. You've thrown out like, 10 or 12 different of strategies that you used over the past couple months. And it's been systematized. You did trial, you did error, you figured out what worked. We did feedback. We got, iterative. Okay, let's try this. You incorporated this in your daily routine. And now it finally has gelled in a way where it sounds like you're at that really sweet spot where you're consistently getting the 1% gains, where you kind of have that consistent, steady upward trajectory. But I just really want people to get that transformation like this is so possible, and you can see it in just how you're living your life now, but you earned it every step of the way. You really had to trudge through, and you had to consistently remind yourself, no, we're not going back, we are pushing forward. And that really is the starting point of psychology that's required. All it really requires to do this, to start, the very first step is you have to defy the past. You have to say, I'm done with that, and I got to move forward now. I know I'm going to slip up. I know I'm going to make mistakes. I know it's not going to be perfect, but I have to keep reminding myself I'm committed to making a new and better life. Because until someone makes that commitment of, I must get this handled and mastered, then the patterns keep repeating. So I
Mhm.
really appreciate that example. In just the last few minutes we have here, why don't you, if you could, just share, if you were speaking to yourself from a few months ago, or if you were speaking to somebody who's viewing this, who is just feeling at rock bottom, or has been feeling just so stuck for so long, right? What would be maybe the simple one or two, pieces of advice that you would impart to them to tell them how to proceed on their journey? What would you share with them?
It's okay that you feel that way. We weren't taught how to deal with this, and life is hard. So don't beat yourself up about it. And if you truly want to get better, you can. And have an open mind to everything that's thrown at you. And it really is about trial and error and figuring out what works for you. But unless you try it, you're not going to know if it works for you or not. So don't automatically say, that's not going to work for me. Just try it. And you never know, it might. And the biggest thing for me is I used to be such a perfectionist where unless I could do it perfect, then I'm not going to do it at all. But now, just progress, baby steps. You're not going to transform overnight. But if you do the steps and you try every single day, you will get where you want to be. I
Mhm.
guarantee that. Like if you're putting in the work, you can do it. And I know it seems hard because I would have been like, I can't do that. That used to be me too. But if, it sounds so cliche and everybody says it, but if I can do it, like you can do it too.
All right. That's beautiful. I love that last advice too about the baby steps. That's such a simple thing, but I forget to mention that to people too, because it's easy to look right up at the mountain and go, how the hell am I going to climb this thing?
Mhm,
But as soon as you really just zero in on, all right, I got to get 10 feet forward, then you're like, oh, wow, 10 feet forward. That's pretty cool, and it builds
mhm.
that sense of certainty. So,
It
well,
does.
I'm incredibly blessed to have known you, Valerie, and I'm so excited for what life is going to look like for you going forward. You're just such a beautiful soul, and thank you so much for sharing and just honoring people who are listening with your authenticity and your story. And it's really going to serve people, and I know it's going to touch somebody and help them restore that faith that we all really need to get the process going. And please send your husband my best. I hope he has a speedy recovery, and I'm just so excited too, because I know that when these changes occur, it makes any relationship so much better too. And I know that you guys are going to be sharing something really beautiful for the next, well, your rest of your life. So it's really exciting. So take care for now. Thank you so much again, and be well. Okay. Enjoy the weather.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.